The crowd buzzed with excitement in the grandstands of the International Equestrian Center in Chicago. Camera flashes sparkled like stars under the afternoon sun, capturing every move of the majestic Thunder, the chestnut horse who had become a living legend in the equestrian world. His gleaming coat reflected years of meticulous care, while his well-defined muscles showcased the results of intense and dedicated training. If this story has caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Let us know which city you're watching from and let's continue. In the VIP area, Jason Steele adjusted his Italian silk tie, a calculated smile decorating his tanned face. As Thunder's owner, he knew every victory the horse secured added more prestige to his business empire. It was no wonder he had invested millions in this exceptional specimen, turning him into the crown jewel of his collection of competition horses. "Mr. Steele, Thunder is ready for the presentation," announced Robert, the head groom, approaching cautiously. Jason simply nodded, his eyes fixed on the arena where his most valuable acquisition would perform. Backstage, however, something felt off. Thunder, usually calm and focused before competitions, seemed unusually restless. His eyes, typically sharp, darted nervously around, and his hooves tapped the ground with an anxiety that didn't go unnoticed by Emily, the veterinarian who had cared for him for years. "Something's wrong," Emily murmured to herself, moving closer to the horse for a final check. Her experienced fingers ran over Thunder's muscular body, searching for any signs of tension or discomfort. "Robert, have you noticed anything unusual about his behavior today?" The groom hesitated, glancing nervously over his shoulder before replying in a low voice. Mr. Steele insisted on changing his preparation routine. He said he needed more impressive results for today's show. Emily felt a tightness in her chest. She knew Jason's obsession with results all too well, but she also knew Thunder wasn't a machine. Years of experience told her that pushing an animal beyond its natural limits could only end in tragedy. In the center of the arena, the loudspeakers announced the next performance. The announcer's voice echoed through the stadium. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to witness the brightest star of national equestrian sports. Here he is, the incomparable Thunder, ridden by Olympic champion Richard Myers." The grandstands erupted in applause as Thunder entered the arena, his imposing figure immediately capturing everyone's attention. Richard, his rider, exuded confidence. But to the more observant eyes, there was a subtle tension in his posture. Emily watched from the technical area, her hands nervously gripping the stethoscope around her neck. Beside her, Robert could barely hide his concern. The course prepared for that day was notoriously challenging, with obstacles positioned at complex angles and distances that would push Thunder to his physical and mental limits. "He's not ready for this," Emily whispered, but her words were drowned out by the music marking the start of the performance. In the VIP area, Jason Steele smiled smugly, already anticipating the camera flashes and headlines for the next day. Thunder began his performance with the elegance that had made him famous. His first jumps were executed with precision, drawing gasps of admiration from the crowd. However, to Emily, each movement revealed subtle signs of tension that made her heart ache. As the performance progressed, the tension in the air became palpable. Thunder tackled each obstacle with determination, but Emily could see his movements lacked their usual fluidity. The audience, mesmerized by the show, didn't notice the small signs of exhaustion building with each jump. Richard, as experienced as he was, tried to compensate for Thunder's instability with subtle adjustments in his riding. His eyes, fixed on the next obstacle, revealed growing concern. He knew, just like Emily, that something wasn't right. In the VIP area, Jason Steele was deep in an animated negotiation with an Arab businessman. "After this performance, his value will double," he boasted, gesturing with his champagne glass. "Thunder isn't just a horse, he's a foolproof investment." It was during the most critical moment of the course that the inevitable happened. As Thunder approached a particularly challenging sequence of obstacles, he hesitated. It was a fraction of a second, imperceptible to most spectators, but enough to destabilize the entire performance. The sound of the impact echoed through the stadium, followed by deafening silence. Emily was the first to react, running toward the center of the arena as the crowd watched in shock. Thunder had stumbled and was now lying on the ground, with Richard trying to calm him. "Step back. Let me examine him," Emily shouted, pushing past the security guards trying to hold back the swarm of photographers. Her skilled fingers quickly moved over the horse's body, stopping at his right foreleg. Her face paled as she realized the gravity of the situation. Jason Steele stormed into the arena, his face twisted in barely contained fury. "How long until he can compete again?" he demanded, completely ignoring the visible suffering of the animal. "Mr. Steele, the situation is delicate," Emily began, keeping her voice steady despite the tension. "Thunder needs immediate surgery and a long recovery period. We're talking months, maybe even—" "Months?" Jason interrupted, his voice sharp as a blade. "Unacceptable. I have signed contracts, international commitments. I need a faster solution." Robert, watching the scene with tears in his eyes, tried to intervene. "Sir, please think of Thunder's well-being. He's given everything for you all these years." "Don't give me that sentimental nonsense," Jason exploded. "Thunder is an investment, nothing more. If he can't compete, he's useless to me." Emily felt her blood boil. In 15 years as a veterinarian, she had never encountered someone so cold and calculating. "As the responsible veterinarian, I can't allow—" "You don't get to allow anything." Jason cut her off, a cruel smile forming on his lips. "As of now, you're fired. Robert, arrange Thunder's transport to the farm. I'll handle this myself." The sky, which had been clear, began to darken. Storm clouds gathered quickly, foreshadowing what was to come. Emily looked at Thunder, then at Jason, and made a decision that would change the course of this story forever. "This isn't over," she promised, her voice trembling with indignation. "The veterinary board will hear about this, and so will the Equestrian Federation. Thunder isn't an object you can just discard." Jason only laughed, a cold, lifeless sound. "Do whatever you want, Doctor. But remember, in this world, money makes the rules. And as for you, Robert, I suggest you keep your mouth shut if you want to keep your job." The storm brewing on the horizon was an omen of what was to come. As the last spectators left the Equestrian Center, Thunder was carefully transported to Jason Steele's farm on the outskirts of the city. The luxurious trailer that once carried a champion now carried a wounded and frightened animal. Emily, still reeling from her dismissal, couldn't get Thunder out of her mind. She knew Jason Steele too well to believe he would provide proper care. In her apartment, she spent the night awake, making calls and sending emails to every contact she had in the veterinary world. "We need to do something," she insisted over the phone with Clara, her former professor from veterinary school. "Jason Steele can't just abandon an animal like this." "Emily, dear, I understand your concern," Clara replied, her voice tired. "But you know how powerful he is. No one wants to cross someone who practically controls the equestrian circuit in the country." The rain poured down as Jason Steele ordered Thunder to be taken to a remote area of the property. The place, an abandoned pasture, was far from prying eyes and the cameras of paparazzi who had begun circling the farm for news about the famous horse. Robert, the groom, tried one last time. "Mr. Steele, please reconsider. Thunder deserves a chance to recover." "You're being too emotional, Robert," Jason replied coldly. "I've already arranged to buy a new horse from Germany. Thunder has served his purpose. Now get back to work and forget about this." Meanwhile, on a small neighboring farm, John Miller, a simple man who tended a small garden and raised a few chickens, noticed suspicious activity at the Steele farm. Since losing his wife Mary, John had lived alone, finding solace only in caring for his animals and plants. The next morning, during his usual walk around the property, John found something that would change his life forever. There, abandoned in the muddy field, was Thunder, shivering from cold and pain. The horse that had once been a symbol of glory and power was now a fragile, lonely figure. "My God," John murmured, approaching cautiously. His years of experience with animals told him immediately that this was no ordinary horse. Despite his pitiful state, there was still nobility in his eyes. With care and patience, John improvised a temporary shelter in his old barn. He didn't have much to offer, but he couldn't leave a living creature to suffer like that. Using clean hay and some old blankets, he created a minimally comfortable space for the injured animal. "Easy, buddy," he whispered as he tried to clean the mud from the horse's coat. "I don't know who did this to you, but you're safe here." Emily, meanwhile, hadn't given up. After a night of research, she discovered that Thunder wasn't the first horse Jason Steele had discarded when they no longer served his purposes. There was a pattern of behavior that needed to be exposed. In her search for help, Emily found unexpected allies. Sarah, a veterinarian who worked at a rural clinic nearby, offered to help as soon as she heard about the situation. "I know the area well," she said. "I'll ask the locals if they've seen anything." Dawn brought a light drizzle over John's barn. Thunder, still weak, had barely touched the water and hay John had offered. John watched the horse with growing concern, aware that his limited knowledge wouldn't be enough to help an animal of this caliber. "I need to find someone who knows more than I do," he murmured to himself as he changed the water in the makeshift trough. That's when he remembered Sarah, the veterinarian who occasionally treated animals in the area. Without wasting time, John headed to the small veterinary clinic in town. Sarah was organizing her equipment when John walked in, breathless and agitated. "Doctor." "Sarah, I'm sorry to barge in like this, but I really need your help," he began, twisting his hat in his hands. "I found an injured horse on my property." Sarah's eyes widened as she heard the description of the animal. "A chestnut competition horse? With an injury to his front leg?" she asked, her heart racing at the possibility of having found Thunder. Meanwhile, Emily continued her relentless investigation. Through contacts in the equestrian world, she discovered that Jason Steele had a history of discarding animals that no longer met his expectations. There was a pattern of neglect, carefully covered up by confidentiality agreements and veiled threats. At his mansion, Jason Steele was hosting important Arab investors. "Thunder. Oh, he's recovering at one of our best facilities," he lied shamelessly, serving champagne to his guests. "He'll be back in competition soon." Sarah arrived at John's property accompanied by Emily, whom she had contacted immediately after John's visit. The reunion between Emily and Thunder was emotional. The horse, despite his weakened state, lifted his head slightly at the sound of his former veterinarian's voice. "I can't believe we found him," Emily said, tears in her eyes, as she carefully examined the animal. "John, you have no idea what it means that you saved him." John, watching the interaction between Thunder and Emily, felt something stir in his heart. It had been years since he allowed himself to get emotionally involved with anything beyond his solitary routine, but there was something special about this situation, something that made him want to help. "I can make the barn available for as long as needed," he offered, surprising himself with the determination in his voice. "It's not much, but it's a safe place." Sarah and Emily exchanged meaningful glances. "John, this is more important than you realize," Sarah explained. "This horse, Thunder, is a legend in the equestrian world. He was abandoned by his owner, Jason Steele, after suffering an injury during a competition." Indignation washed over John's face. "How could someone do that to an animal that trusted them?" he asked, his voice trembling with contained anger. Emily began organizing a treatment plan, while Sarah arranged for the necessary medications. "It's going to be a long recovery," Emily warned. "We need to keep this quiet for now. Jason Steele can't find out where Thunder is." As the days passed, a routine began to form in John's barn. In the morning, he cleaned the space and changed the water, speaking softly to Thunder. During the day, Sarah or Emily would come by to administer treatments, and at night, John kept the horse company, telling stories about his life on the farm. The days at John's farm took on a new dimension with Thunder's presence. The small barn, once a quiet and forgotten place, now pulsed with a different energy. John discovered a strength within himself he didn't know he had, dedicating himself entirely to the horse's care. "You know, Thunder," he said as he changed the makeshift bandages, "it's been a long time since I've felt this useful. Ever since Mary passed, it felt like the days had no color." Thunder, still weak, began to respond subtly to John's constant presence. A gentle movement of his head, a more attentive look when the farmer approached, small signs that didn't go unnoticed by Emily during her daily visits. "It's amazing how he's responding to you," she remarked one afternoon as she applied medication. "Thunder has always been an exceptional horse, but now I'm seeing a side of him I never knew during his competition years." Sarah, who had become a frequent visitor, brought not only medical supplies, but also stories and news from the outside world. "Jason Steele is moving heaven and earth to find Thunder," she revealed during one of her visits. "Apparently, the press has started asking inconvenient questions about the sudden disappearance of the champion horse." The news caused concern among everyone. John, who had never been involved in conflicts, now found himself at the center of an increasingly complex situation. "I won't let them take him," he declared with a firmness that surprised even himself. Thunder isn't an object to be discarded when he's no longer useful. Emily began meticulously documenting Thunder's recovery, photographing each stage of treatment and keeping detailed records of his progress. "We need to build a solid case," she explained. "When the time is right, we'll expose everything Jason Steele has done." Meanwhile, at the Steele mansion, the businessman faced growing pressure. Equestrian sports journalists began speculating about Thunder's true fate. Social media buzzed with theories and questions. "I need you to find that horse immediately," Jason shouted over the phone to his private investigator. "I don't care how much it costs or what you have to do. Thunder is my property, and I need to resolve this before it affects my business." At the farm, oblivious to the turmoil in the outside world, a special bond was forming. John began bringing his books to the barn, reading to Thunder stories of adventure and overcoming. The horse, who once had a distant look in his eyes, now seemed to listen attentively to every word. "You remind me of her, you know," John confided one night, his voice choked with emotion. "Mary had that same look, a look that seemed to see beyond appearances, straight into your soul." Sarah, observing the transformation in both Thunder and John, began developing a bold idea. "What if we turned this place into something bigger?" she suggested during a conversation with Emily. "A refuge for other animals in need of a second chance?" The suggestion planted a seed of hope in everyone's hearts. Emily, who knew firsthand the dark side of the equestrian competition world, saw an opportunity to make a difference. "We could create a sanctuary," she agreed, her eyes shining with possibility. "A place where animals can recover and live in peace." Thunder, as if understanding that his destiny was intertwined with something greater, began showing more evident signs of recovery. His posture, once hunched in pain and despair, gradually regained the nobility that had always defined him. The idea of the sanctuary quickly took on a life of its own. What began as a casual conversation between Sarah and Emily turned into a concrete project. John, initially hesitant about so many changes to his quiet life, surprised everyone with his enthusiasm. "I've got some savings set aside," he revealed, during an impromptu meeting in the barn. "It's not much, but it could help get the necessary renovations started." His eyes shone with a vitality long forgotten. Emily, using her contacts in the veterinary world, began receiving calls from other professionals reporting similar cases to Thunder's. "It's not just in equestrian sports," she explained, flipping through a folder full of documents. "There are horses being discarded in various sports when they no longer meet performance expectations." Sarah dedicated her free time to the project, sketching plans to adapt the property. "We'll need proper stalls, a recovery area, suitable pasture," she listed, scribbling in her notebook. "And most importantly, a complete rehabilitation center." Thunder, as if sensing the positive energy emanating from the transformations around him, showed significant improvements. His leg, once severely compromised, began to bear weight again. John noticed the horse spent more time standing, attentively watching the activity around him. "He's different," John commented to Emily during one of the physical therapy sessions. "It's not just the physical recovery. It's like he's found a new purpose." However, not everything was smooth sailing. One morning, Robert, Thunder's former groom, unexpectedly showed up at the property. His face showed genuine concern. "Jason Steele is furious," he warned, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "He's hired private investigators to comb the area. He's determined to get Thunder back, even if it's just to prove he can." The news hit the group like a bombshell. John instinctively positioned himself in front of the barn, as if wanting to protect Thunder with his own body. "I won't let them take him," he declared, his voice firm. "This place is his home now. Here he's not a trophy. He's a living being who deserves respect and care." Emily and Sarah exchanged worried glances. They knew they were in for a tough battle. Jason Steele wasn't just wealthy. He was influential and well-connected. "We need to speed up our plans," Emily decided. "Robert, do you have proof of what Jason did with the horses that were no longer fit for competition?" Robert hesitated for a moment, but something in his expression changed. "I have records, photos, documents. I kept everything, even though I knew I could lose my job if they found out. Some things are more important than a paycheck." His confession opened new possibilities. With concrete evidence, they could not only protect Thunder, but also expose a system that treated animals as disposable commodities. Sarah began organizing a support network, connecting with other veterinarians and animal rights activists. "We're not alone in this fight," she assured. "There are plenty of people willing to help. They just needed a cause to rally behind." As the days passed, John's property began to transform. Volunteers showed up on weekends, helping with renovations and adaptations. The old barn, once solitary, now echoed with voices and laughter. The news about the future sanctuary began to spread discreetly throughout the region. In small groups, people arrived at John's property offering help. Among them was Clara, Emily's former professor, who arrived on a rainy afternoon carrying a folder full of documents. "I've spent the last few days researching," she announced, spreading papers across John's kitchen table. "Jason Steele has a much darker history than we imagined. Thunder wasn't the first, and unfortunately, he wouldn't have been the last if we hadn't stopped him." Emily examined the documents with growing indignation. There were records of other horses, all with similar stories, champions who simply disappeared after injuries or poor performance. The pattern was alarmingly clear. "Look at this," Sarah pointed out, holding an old newspaper clipping. 5 years ago, one of Steele's horses, Midnight Star, also suffered an injury during a competition. The official story was that he was sent to recover at a farm in Europe. He was never seen again. John, who had been listening in silence, felt his heart tighten. "How can someone build a fortune by causing so much suffering?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. Robert, who now visited the sanctuary regularly, brought more crucial information. "Steele is organizing a major international event next month. He's going to present his new horse, imported from Germany. The press will be there, all the spotlight on him." "This is our chance," Emily declared, a plan forming in her mind. "We can use this moment to expose the truth, but we need to be strategic." Sarah agreed, adding, "We have to protect Thunder and the sanctuary. If Steele finds out the location before we're ready, he could destroy everything we've built." The transformation of the property continued at a rapid pace. What was once a simple barn now expanded with new facilities. Volunteers worked tirelessly, building comfortable stalls and recovery areas. The dream of the sanctuary was taking physical shape. Thunder, oblivious to the humans' concerns, continued his remarkable recovery. His presence had a magnetic effect. Other rescued animals began to arrive. An abandoned pony, an old mare discarded by a breeding farm, an orphaned foal, each with their own story of overcoming. "It's amazing how this place has come to life," Clara observed, watching John lead Thunder on a gentle walk through the pasture. "It's not just a sanctuary for animals, it's a place of healing for all of us." Emily documented every progress, every new arrival, every small victory. Her photos and notes weren't just medical records, but living proof that there was a better way. Emily, a former employee of Steele's breeding farm, also joined the group after learning about the story from Robert. "I worked there for years," she revealed. "I have documents, emails, financial records. Steele never imagined someone could use this against him. The union of this unlikely group of people, a lonely farmer, a determined veterinarian, an experienced professor, a repentant groom, and a courageous former employee, began to threaten the empire Jason Steele had built on the suffering of innocent animals. The big international equestrian event was approaching, and with it, the tension at the newly formed sanctuary grew. Emily, armed with her experience as Steele's former employee, coordinated the organization of the evidence they had gathered over the months. "Steele has always been meticulous in keeping his actions in the shadows," she explained, organizing digital folders on her laptop. "But his arrogance made him make mistakes. He never imagined anyone would dare challenge him." John, who had once lived reclusively in his own world, now found himself at the center of a quiet revolution. The sanctuary already housed 12 rescued animals, each with a story that echoed Thunder's. The property, once quiet and lonely, buzzed with renewed energy. "Mary would have loved to see this," he commented to Emily one afternoon, watching Thunder gently guide the orphaned foal through the pasture. "She always said every living being deserves a second chance." Emily noticed how John had changed. The quiet, somber man had given way to someone full of purpose and determination. "Thunder wasn't the only one who found healing here," she replied, smiling. Sarah arrived at the property with important news. "The event will be broadcast live nationwide," she informed, showing the promotional material on her tablet. "Steele is investing millions to turn this into a spectacle. All the big names in equestrian sports will be there, including those who know the truth but have always remained silent," added Robert, who had just arrived. Many people in the industry know about Steele's practices, but no one had the courage to confront him. Clara, who kept in touch with various professionals in the equestrian world, brought crucial information. I've confirmed the presence of 3 important investigative journalists at the event. They're already interested in stories about mistreatment in professional equestrian sports. The group gathered in the renovated barn, now transformed into a cozy space, to finalize the details of their plan. The walls, once bare, were covered with photos of the rescued animals and their recovery stories. "We can't just expose the evidence," Emily pondered. "We need to tell a story that touches people's hearts. That makes them understand it's not just about Thunder or Steele. It's about how we treat those who depend on our compassion." Thunder, as if understanding the importance of the moment, approached the group. His bearing had regained its majesty, but there was something different in his gaze, a serenity that had replaced the old tension of competitions. "Look at that," John whispered, moved. "He's not the same scared horse we found in that field. Thunder has become a leader here. The other animals follow him. Trust him." Emily documented another physical therapy session with Thunder, highlighting his extraordinary recovery. "It's not just physical healing," she explained to the camera. "It's the complete transformation of a living being who has rediscovered his value beyond medals and trophies." Sarah, who oversaw the health of all the sanctuary's animals, prepared a detailed report on the benefits of rehabilitation in a welcoming environment. "What's happening here is revolutionary," she stated. "We're proving there's a better way." The day of the big international event finally arrived. The International Equestrian Center was unrecognizable, decorated with flags from various countries and filled with members of high society. Jason Steele circulated among the guests, showcasing his new German stallion Warrior Spirit, an imposing specimen that had cost a fortune. "He's the future of national equestrian sports," he boasted to a group of international investors. "With Warrior Spirit, we'll set new records, surpass all previous marks." Backstage at the event, Emily, Robert, and Clara positioned themselves strategically. Each had a specific mission. Emily, using her old contacts, had managed to get press credentials for Marina, who arrived at the venue carrying a folder with carefully selected documents. "The journalists are already in position," Clara whispered over the communicator. "Teresa Santos, from Equestre Global magazine, is especially interested in our story. She has a strong reputation in investigative journalism." Meanwhile, at the sanctuary, John and Sarah continued their work, now on an even larger scale. A team of independent documentary filmmakers, contacted by Clara, recorded the daily routine of the place and the impressive recovery of the animals. "There are no gold trophies here," John explained to the cameras, his voice filled with emotion. "Our victory is seeing each animal regain their dignity, their will to live. It's what Thunder taught us. There's no greater value than respect for life." At the Equestrian Center, the event officially began. Jason Steele took the stage for his opening speech, unaware that his facade of success was about to crumble. "Today we celebrate excellence," he proclaimed into the microphone. "Equestrian sports demand dedication, investment, and above all, commitment to perfection." It was at that moment that Emily stood up among the journalists. "And what happens to the horses that don't meet your definition of perfection, Mr. Steele?" Her clear, firm voice echoed through the venue. A tense silence fell. Steele tried to maintain his smile, but his eyes betrayed his concern. "I don't understand your question, miss." "Dr. Emily Carter, equine veterinary specialist," she introduced herself, moving toward the stage. "I'm talking about Thunder, Midnight Star, and so many other champions who simply disappeared when they no longer served your purposes." Robert, positioned strategically, began projecting images on the event's giant screens. Photos and documents proving Steele's dark history began to appear, including records of suspicious transfers and manipulated veterinary reports. Emily, on the other side of the hall, coordinated the distribution of dossiers to the main journalists present. "Every document has been verified and authenticated," she explained. "We have witnesses willing to confirm every piece of information." The crowd began to murmur, smartphones capturing every moment. Steele's face alternated between shades of red and white as he desperately tried to regain control of the situation. The International Equestrian Center buzzed with the explosive revelation. The evidence presented by Emily and her team was irrefutable. Photographs, official documents, and recorded testimonies painted a devastating picture of Jason Steele's practices. "Here we have," Emily continued, her firm voice echoing through the hall, "records of dozens of horses who were simply discarded when they no longer met Mr. Steele's standards of excellence. Animals who dedicated their lives to competitions, who brought glory and profit, abandoned like broken equipment." Steele tried to intercept the microphone, but Teresa Santos, the renowned journalist from Equestra Global, was already on her feet, asking her own questions. "Mr. Steele, how do you respond to the accusations about Thunder, your latest champion? There are witnesses who confirm his abandonment in precarious conditions after an injury." The businessman tried to maintain his composure, adjusting his Italian tie. "These accusations are absurd. Thunder is at a specialized clinic in Europe, receiving the best possible treatment." It was then that Sarah, who was maintaining a live broadcast from the sanctuary, managed to connect to the event's giant screens. The images that appeared left the audience in shock. Thunder, majestic and recovered, guiding other rescued horses through the lush pasture of John's farm. "As you can see," Sarah narrated, her voice choked with emotion, "Thunder not only survived abandonment but has become a symbol of hope. At the Rising Spirit Sanctuary, he found not just physical healing, but a new purpose." The broadcast showed John working with the animals, scenes of daily life at the sanctuary, and the impressive results of the rehabilitation. Each image was a blow to Steele's carefully constructed reputation. Clara, who watched everything from the front row, noticed how the main sponsors began to stand up and discreetly leave the event. Jason Steele's empire of appearances was crumbling in real time. Emily took advantage of the moment to distribute more documents among the journalists. "Here are the financial records," she explained. "Falsified invoices, medical expenses never incurred, an elaborate scheme to cover up the true fate of the discarded animals." Robert, who knew every detail of Steele's practices, began narrating his experiences. "For years, I was forced to silence my conscience. I saw champions abandoned because an injury made them economically unviable. Thunder was just the latest in a long list. At the sanctuary, the documentary filmmakers captured a touching moment. The orphaned foal, now recovered, played under Thunder's watchful gaze. John, observing the scene, shared his own journey of transformation with the cameras. "When I found Thunder that rainy morning, I thought I was saving a horse," he reflected. "But the truth is Thunder saved us. He showed us that there's always hope, that the value of a life can't be measured in medals or figures." The repercussions of the event spread like ripples in a calm lake. Within hours, the story of Thunder and the Rising Spirit Sanctuary dominated the headlines of the country's major media outlets. What had started as a scandal in the equestrian world was becoming a movement for profound changes in the treatment of competition animals. Jason Steele, cornered by irrefutable evidence, saw his main sponsors publicly announce the termination of contracts. His attempt to discredit the accusations fell flat when more employees, encouraged by the example of Robert and Emily, began sharing their own stories. "The sanctuary is receiving hundreds of messages," Sarah commented, reading emails on her tablet. "Breeding farm owners, veterinarians, grooms. Everyone wants to know about our work, offering help, sharing similar experiences." John, who had once lived reclusively in his own world, now found himself the inadvertent spokesperson for a greater cause. "We didn't plan any of this," he confided to Emily during a quiet moment in the stable. "It started with an act of compassion for an injured animal, and look what it's become." The most significant impact, however, was felt in the equestrian world itself. The National Equestrian Confederation called an extraordinary meeting to discuss new regulations on animal welfare. Clara, invited as a special consultant, brought proposals based on the practices developed at Rising Spirit. "We're not just caring for injured horses," she explained during the meeting. "We're redefining the relationship between humans and animals in sports. Every living being deserves respect, dignity, and the chance to recover when needed." Thunder, oblivious to all the commotion his story had caused, continued his routine at the sanctuary. His presence had a transformative effect on the new animals that arrived, especially the most traumatized ones. It was as if he could communicate, through his own experience of overcoming, that there was hope. "It's fascinating to observe how he interacts with the other horses," Emily commented, taking notes in her research journal. Thunder has developed a special sensitivity to identify which animals need more attention. It's like he's a natural therapist. Sarah began implementing an innovative rehabilitation program, combining traditional medical treatments with alternative therapies. Each animal is unique, she explained to a group of veterinary students visiting the sanctuary. There's no magic formula. The secret is respecting each one's time and process. Emily, using her experience in administration, helped structure the sanctuary as a non-profit organization. Donations began pouring in from all over the country, allowing for the expansion of facilities and the hiring of more specialized professionals. "We're creating something revolutionary here," she said during a team meeting. "A model that can be replicated elsewhere, showing that it's possible to combine sporting excellence with compassion and respect for animals." 6 months after the revelations that shook the equestrian world, Rising Spirit had become a model of excellence in animal rehabilitation and care. John's small farm now boasted modern facilities while maintaining its welcoming, homey essence. "I never imagined that old barn would turn into all this," John commented, contemplating the new rehabilitation center. The place now included a complete veterinary clinic, adapted training tracks, and specially designed living areas to promote the animals' recovery. Emily coordinated a veterinary residency program, sharing knowledge with a new generation of professionals. "What we've learned here goes far beyond traditional medicine," she explained to the residents. "You need to understand that each animal carries its own story, its traumas and fears. True healing begins when we respect that individuality." Thunder had become a sort of natural ambassador for the sanctuary. His serene, majestic presence inspired confidence in the new animals that arrived, many of them traumatized by experiences similar to his. The special bond he had developed with John was the subject of study and admiration. "It's amazing how they communicate," Sarah observed during a therapy session with a newly rescued horse. "Thunder seems to know exactly when to approach and when to give space." John has also developed this sensitivity. Together they form an extraordinary healing duo. Clara, who now divided her time between the university and the sanctuary, began a research project on communication between horses and humans. "What we're observing here challenges much of what we thought we knew about equine behavior," she explained. "We're discovering levels of empathy and understanding that traditional science can't always measure." The changes also reflected in the local community. What had started as John's solitary project had become a hub for social development. Locals found employment at the sanctuary, students visited to learn about animal care, and tourists began to appear, drawn by the inspiring story of the place. "Our mission has grown far beyond what we imagined," Emily reflected during a Rising Spirit board meeting. "We're not just saving animals, we're changing how people see the relationship between humans and horses." Robert, who now coordinated the training program for grooms, developed innovative methods based on respect and mutual understanding. "We've completely abandoned the idea of domination," he explained. "Here, we build partnerships based on trust." The impact of Rising Spirit began to spread internationally. Delegations from other countries visited the sanctuary, interested in replicating the model. John, once so reserved, discovered he was a natural communicator as he shared his experience with visitors. "Each recovery story is unique," he said during a guided tour, "but they all have something in common. Transformation happens when we offer unconditional love and respect. That's what Thunder taught us." The first anniversary of Rising Spirit approached, and with it came deep reflections on the journey they had taken. The sanctuary had become much more than a rehabilitation center. It was now a living symbol of transformation and hope. "We need to celebrate in a special way," Sarah suggested during a team meeting. "Not just our achievements, but especially the stories of overcoming we've witnessed here." The idea quickly took shape. They decided to organize an open house day where people could see firsthand the work done at the sanctuary. The chosen date intentionally coincided with the day Thunder had arrived at John's farm. "Every animal here has a story that deserves to be told," Emily reflected, organizing a photo exhibition documenting the sanctuary's journey. The images captured pivotal moments: Thunder's first day in the old barn, his gradual recovery, the arrival of other animals, the transformations of the space. John, watching the preparations, felt a different kind of emotion. "Mary would be proud," he told Clara as they helped organize the space for visitors. She always said love has the power to heal any wound. The impact of Rising Spirit was already being felt far beyond its walls. The National Equestrian Confederation had implemented new regulations directly inspired by the practices developed at the sanctuary. Now it was mandatory for all equestrian centers to have dignified retirement programs for their animals. It's a paradigm shift, Clara explained during a lecture to veterinary students. We're no longer talking just about performance and results, but about overall well-being and respect for life in all its stages. Thunder, now fully recovered, had naturally taken on the role of mentor for the sanctuary's new residents. It was common to see him gently approach newly arrived horses, especially the most frightened ones, offering a calming presence. It's as if he knows exactly what they're feeling, Robert observed, documenting the animal's behavior for a study on emotional recovery in horses. Thunder has developed an extraordinary sensitivity to identify and soothe the suffering of others. Emily now coordinated an environmental education program that welcomed schools from across the region. Children are naturally empathetic with animals, she explained. When they hear the stories of our residents, they take away valuable lessons about compassion and respect. The sanctuary had also become an internationally recognized research center. Veterinarians and animal behavior specialists came from different countries to study the methods developed there. Rising Spirit's holistic approach, combining physical and emotional care, was setting new standards in the treatment of traumatized animals. The day of Rising Spirit's first anniversary celebration dawned radiant. The sanctuary was unrecognizable, decorated with colorful ribbons and panels, telling the recovery stories of its inhabitants. Hundreds of visitors began arriving early, eager to see the place that had become a symbol of hope. "It's surreal to see so many people here," John commented to Emily, watching the activity from his house's porch. The farmer, once so reserved, now felt comfortable sharing his experience with visitors. Every person who comes here takes a piece of this story with them. Among the special guests was Teresa Santos, the journalist who had helped expose the truth about Jason Steele. She was preparing a special report on the sanctuary's impact on the national equestrian scene. "What you've built here goes far beyond animal rehabilitation," she observed during an interview with the team. "You've created a new model of the relationship between humans and horses, based on mutual respect and understanding." Thunder, as always, was the center of attention. His majestic and serene presence inspired admiration in everyone who met him. During a special demonstration, he and John led a presentation that moved the audience, not for jumps or acrobatics, but for the evident connection between man and animal. "See how he chooses to be here," Sarah explained to a group of visitors. "Thunder is free to go anywhere in the sanctuary, but he prefers to stay close to people, helping other horses in their recovery. He's found his true purpose." Clara took the opportunity to announce an important development. Rising Spirit would host an international conference on animal welfare the following year. "We'll welcome experts from around the world," she explained enthusiastically. "We'll share our experiences and learn from other similar projects." Emily coordinated a group of volunteers guiding visitors through the sanctuary, showing the different treatment and recovery areas. "Every space here was designed to provide maximum comfort and safety for the animals," she explained. "But the most important thing is the love and dedication of our team." Robert, who now worked exclusively on the rehabilitation program, conducted workshops on respectful handling techniques. "We've completely abandoned traditional domination methods," he explained. "Here we build relationships based on trust and mutual respect." A particularly touching moment occurred when a family arrived with their daughter, a 12-year-old girl who had lost the use of her legs after an accident. As Thunder gently approached her, everyone present witnessed the transformative power of unconditional love. "It's amazing how animals can sense who needs them," Emily commented, observing the interaction. "Thunder has this special gift of touching people exactly where they need to be touched." The celebration continued when an unexpected visit caused a stir. Jason Steele, now a very different man from the powerful businessman he once was, arrived discreetly at the sanctuary. His empire had crumbled after the revelations, but something deeper had changed within him. "I've come to ask for forgiveness," he declared, his voice choked with emotion, before John and the entire team. "I've spent the last year reflecting on my actions and realizing how wrong I was. Today I understand that true value isn't in medals or trophies." The silence that followed was broken by a familiar whinny. Thunder, grazing peacefully with other horses, approached the group. To everyone's surprise, the horse stopped in front of his former owner, showing no fear or resentment. "It's extraordinary," Clara whispered to Emily. "Thunder is giving us another lesson in forgiveness and overcoming." John, after a moment of reflection, extended his hand to Steele. "Rising Spirit exists to show that there's always a chance to start over," he said. "If you're truly sorry, you can help us do even more for these animals." Steele's proposal surprised everyone. He offered his former property, a large breeding farm nearby, to expand the sanctuary's work. "I don't want anything in return," he explained. "Just the opportunity to be part of this transformation." Sarah and Emily immediately began visualizing the possibilities. With more space, they could significantly increase the number of animals they could help and develop new rehabilitation programs. "We could create a training center for veterinarians and grooms," Emily suggested enthusiastically. "Train more professionals in our philosophy of care and respect." Robert, who knew the breeding farm's facilities well, was already planning adaptations. "With a few modifications, we can create environments even better suited for different types of recovery," he explained, sketching on a notepad. The news of Rising Spirit's expansion spread quickly among the attendees, generating a wave of new support offers. Business people, moved by Steele's story of transformation, committed to regular donations. Universities proposed research partnerships. Thunder, as if understanding the importance of the moment, led Steele on a walk through the sanctuary, showing him his new home. The businessman, visibly emotional, saw firsthand the work being done there and the lives being transformed. "You've built something extraordinary," he told John, watching the recovered animals interact with visitors. "Something far greater than anything I ever achieved with all my money and influence." 2 years had passed since that first encounter between John and Thunder in a muddy field. Rising Spirit had become a global reference in animal recovery and care, with its practices being replicated in various countries. Jason Steele's former property, now completely redesigned, housed an advanced center for animal welfare studies. Veterinarians, grooms, and specialists from around the world came to learn the methodology developed there, taking away not just techniques, but a new way of seeing the relationship between humans and animals. "Every story that started here has generated other stories," John reflected, watching the sunset from his porch, now transformed into a welcoming administrative center. Thunder grazed nearby, his majestic figure even more impressive with the passing years. Emily coordinated an international team of researchers documenting recovery cases and developing new treatment protocols. "What we've discovered here goes far beyond traditional veterinary medicine," she explained. "It's an approach that considers the animal in its entirety, body, mind, and spirit." Sarah had expanded the rehabilitation program, creating specific departments for different types of trauma. "Every animal that arrives teaches us something new," she said. "And Thunder continues to be our greatest teacher." Jason Steele himself had found his path to redemption, dedicating himself entirely to the project. His business experience now served to ensure the sanctuary's sustainability and its expansions. "I've learned that true success isn't measured in money," he confessed, "but in the positive impact we have on others' lives." Clara, in partnership with international universities, developed a revolutionary academic program. The Rising Spirit method, as it became known, combined veterinary medicine, animal psychology, and humane handling practices. Emily transformed the sanctuary's administration into a model of sustainable management, ensuring the project would benefit future generations. "We're not just building a sanctuary," she explained. "We're creating a legacy of compassion." Robert, now the training director, watched with pride as his students spread across the world, taking with them the principles learned at Rising Spirit. "Everyone who passes through here becomes an agent of transformation," he said. On a special afternoon, as a new group of students gathered to learn the sanctuary's story, Thunder approached, followed by several other recovered horses. The moment perfectly captured what Rising Spirit had become, a place where love transformed lives, both animal and human. John, watching the scene, felt his heart overflow with gratitude. "Mary was right," he whispered. "Love really does have the power to heal all wounds." And so, what began as an act of compassion on a rainy morning had become a global movement of love and respect for life. Rising Spirit had become more than a sanctuary. It was a beacon of hope, showing that there's always a path to recovery, redemption, and rebirth. Dear listeners, the journey of Thunder and John shows us that love and compassion have the power to transform lives. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share it with those who also believe in the power of second chances. Every day, extraordinary stories of overcoming happen around us. We just need the eyes to see and the hearts to feel. Leave your like, share your thoughts in the comments, and join us in this mission to spread hope and love throughout the world. After all, as Thunder taught us, it's never too late to start over.